My very first job was as an actor. I was an
Mm,
actor in
mm.
Hollywood. I've got a handful of movie credits and a bunch of commercials. I left that. I became
Okay.
a police officer. I left being a police
Nice.
officer, which, funny enough, was a weird transition to then go into business ownership and ultimately into HR. And I was never an HR leader, which is where the
Right.
majority of my career has
Right.
been. I've never been an HR leader that was about compliance or policing. But I'll tell
Mm.
you what, I learned as a police officer, talk to everybody, be open to every conversation, because you're going to learn something really important. It's going to change the direction of your business. It did with mine. Even down to, and I'll give you a very quick, I know you probably don't want a long answer on this one, but I actually was pitching to two very frontline, non-buyer HR people. And I said, tell me one thing that you think is like missing from the platform. And they gave me a really good idea, and it changed what we were doing. A lot of people think, AI is going to replace my job.
Yes.
I think it would be,
I also believe that.
it's a legitimate concern, I think, for a recruiter to say, even given our product, right? Well, I don't want this product to replace me. And the reality is we built this so that it didn't replace anybody. But here's what is going to happen with artificial intelligence, I think especially, is AI is not going to replace the job. But the people that use AI are going to replace the people who don't. We did some Spanish language translation, and my Spanish language translator is in Pakistan.
Wow. That's amazing.
So,
it is with everyone. You can't learn each and everything, but at least you should have the knowledge that what is right, what is wrong, and you are able to understand someone who is expert in some domain. Let's say if you are talking to a technical person and he knows the tech and you don't, but you should have that much knowledge that you can judge that whether what he's saying is right or wrong.
I like to think about it as you've got to know enough to ask really smart questions, because smart questions provoke great responses from other smart people. And so if you get in there and you get your head around enough of it that you can ask the right question, I think you're doing all right.
Hello everyone, my name is Ali. I'm the CEO of Al-Burraq Technologies, and today we have a very different person and the different kind of tech star because he is not that much techie but is always involved in the technical side. Scott Morris, how are you?
Great, thank you. Great to see you, and great to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you so much. You're looking so handsome.
Thank you.
What is the secret behind it? Let us know.
It's a good camera. Get a good camera and a good light. That's it, because that's the only thing that's going to make me look good. So
now you are exposing me as well.
It's too funny. I also think it's funny that you describe me as the non-techie. I don't even have a puffy jacket. Like, I am so not a tech guy trying to compete in a tech world. So I think it's a really good description.
That is what I've said, that you're not a techie, but you are involved in the tech.
Well, you learn quickly as a founder. And I mean, I think every founder goes through it, right? Like you don't get the luxury of of being able to hide behind somebody else. You have to learn it. So I'm becoming a tech.
Okay, there's a different approach. Some people say that you have to learn it, right? And some people say that you have to build a team that is complementing each other. So which one do you prefer and why?
I mean, you'll get this from me a lot. I'm a both and kind of guy. I think you've got to do both.
Right.
But here's why. The role for me, at least what I'm learning right now, what I've experienced over the time since we founded the company, being a founder, being a CEO, they're slightly different roles. Founder is very much about the product and about the direction and about the vision. CEO is about running the organization. It's about executing effectively, right? And I think to be a really great CEO, before you can get a team around you that is a really good team, and I'm a super strong believer in what you said just a second ago, that the idea is you've got to get that team around you. But to do that, you have to understand a little bit about what, kind of the path that they walk. And so if if I allowed myself the excuse of, I'll just get somebody who knows how to do that, rather than I'm going to go figure out a part of that, and then I'm going to go get somebody who can take me to the next level. I think I think I'd be a different leader. I'd be a different CEO. I'd be a different founder. I'd be a different team member. And I don't want that. And I think, it would be a different interaction. So I think it's both
Right,
and. I
right.
think you as a founder, you've got to embrace it. You got to lean in, you got to
Hmm.
learn it, and then you've got to, you got to get the team who are the experts around you.
Right. So jack of all, master of none.
I don't know, master of none. I think the race is you've got to become at least a partial master of something, because as most
Right.
founders experience, like in the beginning, there is nobody else, so you don't
Hmm.
have any
Hmm.
choice.
I failed one company, not one, more than one. I failed some of the companies just because I was trying to do each and everything. So that is why I failed those companies. And from the last one I failed, I got my lessons that, okay, from now on, I'm not going to involve myself into sales and the marketing side. I'm good in making things, I'm good in developing things. I'll develop products, I'll make the products, and I'll hand it over to the sales
Yeah.
and marketing guys. That's my job.
I get that, and I will tell you, as I'm sure you found in your own experiences, like there are certain pieces that I cannot wait to hand off, because they're
Hmm.
pieces that I just feel like I'm not an expert at. But
Yeah.
like I said, up to a certain point, you just don't get that luxury, and you got to do it. So I'm doing it to the best of my ability.
Right, right. It is with everyone. You can't learn each and everything, but at least you should have the knowledge that what is right, what is wrong, and you are able to understand the someone who is expert in some domain. Let's say if you are talking to a technical person and he knows the tech and you don't, but you should have that much knowledge that you can judge that whether what he's saying is right or wrong.
I like to think about it as you've got to know enough to ask really smart questions, because smart
Yes.
questions provoke great responses from other
Hmm,
smart
hmm,
people.
hmm,
And so
hmm.
if you get in there and you get your head around enough of it that you can ask the right question,
Right,
I think you're doing all right.
right. That makes a lot of sense. And the conversation started in a very engaging way that I forgot to ask you about your background and the career you had.
Well, I've got a weird, sort of a really weird career path. If I go all the way back to the
Right.
very beginning, and I didn't tell you this
Hmm.
when we talked before, but my very first job was as an actor. I was an
Hmm.
actor in
Hmm.
Hollywood. I've got a handful of movie credits and a bunch of commercials. I left that. I
Okay.
became a police officer. I left being a police
Nice.
officer, which, funny enough, was a weird transition to then go into business ownership and ultimately into HR. And I was never an HR leader, which is where the
Right.
majority of my career has
Right.
been. I've never been an HR leader that was about compliance or policing. But I'll
Hmm.
tell you what I learned as a police officer is that four people could stand on four corners of the same street and see an accident and describe it totally differently, because they're
Makes
personalizing.
sense.
And that happens in organizations as well. And as an HR leader, I learned that. So I've spent 23 years, I think, in the profession of human resources and people operations. The majority of that has been as a chief people officer, but I've been
Right. Right.
accountable for almost every aspect of people
Right.
ops and of HR.
Okay, let's move forward and let's talk about the company you are running right now, Propulsion AI, right? So tell
Yes.
us about that and tell us what is the vision of the company. It's
Well,
a big
so
question, and I want a very detailed answer so that people can understand what you're doing and what your vision is.
yeah, and I've worked really hard to get away from detailed answers, right? Because I think the whole trick as a founder is be concise with stuff. So, but
I agree.
I'll give you my medium version of it.
Done, done, done.
By
I'm
concept,
resting myself.
by concept, we're focused on organizational fit, and
Right.
people get uncomfortable when they hear that word organizational fit, because they associate that with fit in, and it's
Hmm.
not what we
Hmm.
mean at all. But if you think about a work situation that you've been in, where that work has, even when it's been hard, it hasn't felt bad. The relationship you have with your boss, even when your boss is giving you tough messages, you don't interpret them poorly or feel as if they're attacks on you. Those are indicators of high fit. It just feels right to you. And there's a science behind getting to that fit. And, the reality is tens of millions of people go to work every day in jobs that they don't fit in. And so when we founded Propulsion AI, we did it really based on this notion that we can help both organizations find employees that are going to fit better in their organizations in more detailed and scientific terms, and help the other side of that equation too. A lot of organizations, a lot of companies are focused on helping corporations, and very few are focused on helping the individual. And we care about both sides of that. Individuals need to make really strong and optimized choices about where they go to work. And too often, the deck is stacked in favor of the company and not the individual. So the company gets all of the information they need to make a choice, but the individual doesn't get what they need to make a choice. And we want to level that playing field. So we're focused on this concept of fit. What we're bringing to market, and we're about to launch our first product, is very focused on one of the most important talent management aspects that there is, and that's creating a job scope. Now, when people hear that, here's what I want them to hear. A really solid job scope is an understanding of how a role fits into your strategy. What are the outcomes that you want to expect for a person in that role to produce? How are you going to measure those outcomes? What are the competencies and skills and knowledge and certifications that a top performer would need in order to be great in that role? That's a really effective job scope. And what we've done with our first product, we created an intelligent, we call her a digital human. Her name is Athena. And she is the equivalent of a senior recruiter or a senior HR business partner. And what she does is, if you were hiring a role, she would interview you about that role. And she would use the information she gathered from you to simultaneously write an outcomes-oriented job description, write a job posting that's SEO optimized, write an interviewer preparation document, find hashtags, write social media posts, put it all out on the web and flow it into your tech stack. She does all of that for you. And the process that takes most managers more than 10 or 12 hours, she does in about 30 minutes.
Okay. So that is your recruiter, or you're doing it through AI?
So we're doing all of that with artificial intelligence.
Right. So that is the name of that program you have written, right?
Correct.
Okay. So that means it's kind of something. It is asking questions to the candidate or the person who is there for the job, and then evaluating on the basis of those answers, right?
Actually, almost with just one small change. Athena is our digital human, and she is not dealing with candidates directly. She's dealing with the hiring managers and the recruiters
Okay.
directly.
Okay.
So a
So,
recruiter, and this is typically a really hard process for a recruiter to lead a manager through. What we've done is we've created a way for the manager to do it themselves without a lot of
okay.
extra burden on them. In fact,
So,
it's 32 times faster.
right. So that is how you are designing a better job description, right?
Better job description, better job posting, and that
Hmm.
leads to better candidates, and it leads to a faster, more
So
streamlined selection process.
I am having another perspective of it as well. Tell me one more thing. It is asking the questions in the form of some 3D avatar, or it is asking the questions in the form of text or something?
So that's a great question. And what we want is actually the former. We want it to be a digital avatar. We want it to feel like you're interacting with a real human
Right.
being. Where
Yes.
we started, because the 1.0 version of anything isn't what you aspire to. It's just what you're taking to market. So the user interface is very much like a text chat interaction,
Okay.
but
I
it's
get it.
dynamic. It's dynamic.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah, I
answers
know
the
because
user
I am
gives
from a
lead
technical
to different
background.
questions.
Yeah. I do understand because I we are working on a similar product, not product, but we are working in the similar domain, I must say, and in which what we are doing it for the candidates. We want to evaluate those candidates through that 3D avatar and evaluate their skill set, evaluate their domain knowledge, evaluate their personality. So we want to do that with that. And that is why I
With the
was
candidate. Well,
connecting the dots
I
with
think
your
it's one of the
product.
reasons that this is such an exciting time is because the technologies have evolved now so quickly in the recent
Yeah.
last 2 or 3 years that these
Hmm.
things, like the things that we were dreaming 3 years ago, are now
Hmm.
wildly possible.
Yes, I agree. The transformation is very fast. The speed of that transformation is so unmatchable. It's so hard to get that the real challenge is to match that speed of innovation
That's
right
right.
now. Right. Okay. So I think that if you're doing that, I'm thinking out loudly, and please do not mind if I give you some tough questions as well. Like, for example, because the output of your product is a better job description, right? Ultimately, the results are going to be the better candidates, but right now the output is better job description, right?
Well, I would say yes, but I would say yes and. I think the
Okay.
principal value is less tangible. The principal value
Right.
that we create is we help the manager get their head around the job. We help them to truly understand in detail. And I'll
Hmm.
tell you why I think
Hmm.
that's the most important. More
Right.
important than some of the tangible product is because when a top 5% or a top 1% candidate talks to that manager, what they want as a decision criteria is to know that that manager really understands how that role is going to fit into the organization and how it's going to deliver value. And a lot of managers can't do that. So I think that, getting your head around the role is the real value. But out of that comes some additional value, like what you mentioned. That job description is critical. A good job description should reduce ambiguity down as close to zero as possible and raise up the ability for the individual in the role to act with autonomy. A great job posting is what draws in the great candidates. And it's honestly what scares off the wrong candidates. And then the interviewer document is what keeps all of your interviewers on the same page so that you are targeted in your interviews and not scattershot.
I do get that the ultimate value is not tangible, or you can say tangible as well, right? I do get that, but you also know that when you bring such product in front of the customers, in front of the companies, uh, you can answer this better than me, that companies will understand, or companies or managers will understand this thing, that this thing is so valuable, and ultimately this thing is going to be very beneficial for them.
Well, and they want it to be very tangible. So you're right. That job description is really important. And what we're finding is that people react really, really positively to it,
Hmm.
especially when they see the output from the system, because
Right.
this is such a pain point. Universally, it crosses boundaries of levels of management, it
Hmm.
crosses
Hmm. Hmm.
industries, it crosses companies. It's really a pain point. And we're very, I think we feel very fortunate that we found that kind of product market fit.
Right. Right. I think there is a lot of room of collaboration between you and us.
I
We
hope
should do
so.
that.
I would
We
I
should
would
do.
love to talk to you about that. That's great.
Yeah,
Because
of
you
course.
because you know what? Because we care about the aspect that you're focused on too. We care deeply about those candidates and helping them to
Hmm.
make optimum choices. And that it sounds like
Because
that's really where your focus is.
why I'm asking these questions, because the thing is that when you are dealing in such domain, the ultimate thing for the companies or the managers or the recruiters that matters is they should get more and more candidates and more related candidates. That is the thing that matters for them. They do not sometimes realize that the problem is in the job description, and you're focusing that part. That is very important, but in order to satisfy them more with the product, eventually you might have to come up with the other route and say, okay, now we are evaluating candidates as well, and we are matchmaking your job descriptions with the candidates. Are you
That's a
getting my
part of the
point?
broader vision that we have for really identifying and where that fit match is.
Right, right. So tell us the broader vision of the product.
Well, the roadmap extends beyond what we're doing. But if you, like you said a second ago, if you don't start with a really good job description,
Hmm, hmm,
everything that follows is really a lot more challenging. But
hmm,
then you get into kind of the second phase. Let's say that you have a really great job posting. It does exactly what you need it to do and you put it out on the web. I don't know what you've seen recently, but when I look, I see jobs that have 400 and 500 applicants in them. There is no way that a human recruiter can give attention at the level that they need to 400 or 500 candidates. And the reality is, this is why sites like Glassdoor and other sites that track candidate sentiment, have they're plastered with like these stories about I applied to the company and they ghosted me and I started to interact with them and then I never heard anything. And a part of the problem is volume. And so our the second phase of our roadmap is really focused on addressing that. What's a better way to select the candidates, and what's a better way to help those recruiters deal with the volume? And our answer is that
Right,
same digital
right.
human. Now,
That makes sense.
once we've got a candidate that we want to hire, the
Hmm.
next most important thing is getting that candidate set up for success. And there's a ton of ways, and I don't want to be dismissive of any of them, of
Hmm.
onboarding an individual into an organization. And all of the social onboarding and the friendships and all of that's really important. And the paperwork is important to the people that need the paperwork to be important. But one of the most, and I think arguably one of the most forgotten aspects is getting that person into a super healthy, productive relationship with their boss. And so facilitating a better one-on-one experience and actually being able to track it to the OKRs that we built into the job description becomes critically important. And then beyond that, the fourth and final phase for us of our roadmap is all about feedback. The average manager spends 210 to 310 hours per employee per year on performance management. Imagine having 7 direct reports. That's a lot of
Right,
time,
right,
right?
right, right.
We believe that artificial intelligence has a very strong role to play in
Hmm.
creating the experience around performance management that is about growth and not about correction, or not just about correction.
Right. Your knowledge about HR and the performance management is commendable. I must
Well,
appreciate that.
I feel very lucky because,
It
the
might be the
idea,
reason
I've
of that
been doing it
weird
for 20
career you
years.
had.
Now technology can now enable those. So I feel very fortunate that we're building this company at this time.
Right, right, right. I can get the value because I'm at the other side of it, and I do hire a lot of people in the company, and we are also doing staff augmentation as well. So that
Oh,
means we are always involved in that in the hiring process from both ends. So I do
yeah.
understand that how valuable it is, how much value this product contains.
Well, and I know we're going to talk about future of work, but the
Hmm.
future of work is a lot more skewed toward the gig side of the economy than it is toward
Yeah.
what we saw 10 years ago. And you and I both
Right.
know that. And I think a lot of people recognize that now, but that makes it even more critical.
Right, right. So, okay, we'll talk about this later because we are going to talk about this gig economy and uh, augmentation model, right? But we'll talk about it later. But right now, what I have to ask you is because you are involved in the recruitments, what how was it like 10 years ago, and what is the difference right now in the recruitment process?
Gosh, I don't know about 10 years ago. I don't know if I can pin it to that time frame,
Right.
but I'll tell you a major difference that I see
Hmm.
is candidates. It used to be that people's mentality was, I'm thankful to have that job, and companies believed that. And companies were like, I think the attitude from a lot of managers in companies is you should just be thankful that you work here. That has gone away. And candidates are very aware now of the value that they bring and of the exchange of value. And I think one of the ways that a lot of managers need to catch up is they need to think about the salary that they're paying as an investment. And we, of course, we bring that back to the job scope. We're very focused on that, right? But if you have an effective job scope, you understand the outcomes that you need produced, and you can understand how to compensate on those outcomes. Candidates know that on their side too. They understand the skills that they bring to the table. Whether they've had the experiences or not, they understand how their skills are going to fit into solving a set of problems. And they're willing to take those skills to places that will appreciate them. And when I say appreciate them, I'm not just talking about, like, I think the war for perks. I think to a
Hmm.
certain extent it is still there, and companies want to do nice things, but I don't think the majority of candidates care as much about dining options and pool tables as they do having a really meaningful relationship with their boss, a set of really interesting problems to work on, and flexibility to run their lives that are inclusive of work and not one versus the other.
Right. That makes sense. With that, we will talk about machine learning and AI as well. So tell us. about that how AI and ML is going to transform the future of work as well. Because the jobs are going to be transformed, everybody knows that, but
Yeah.
how it is going to be like that.
Well, let me address like a sort of nuanced aspect, at least that I hear in your question,
Hmm.
which is, you know, a lot of people think, AI is going to replace my job. I think it
Yes,
would be
I also
a,
believe that.
it's a legitimate concern, I think, for a
Hmm.
recruiter to say, even given our product, right?
Hmm.
Well, I don't want this product to replace me. And the reality is, we built this so that it didn't replace anybody. But here's what is going to happen with artificial intelligence, I think, especially, is AI is not going to replace the job, but the people that use AI are going to replace the people who don't. And so the recruiters that embrace a tool like the one that we've created will find that they are finally free to go out and perform the activities and engage in the value creation that they've always wanted to be in, but that they couldn't be in because they're dragged down by these things that technology can just do better. And I think that's a place where we're going to start to really see the impact.
But that is the start of your product, right? Eventually, you are going to be at the other side of it, where all the evaluations which are right now done by the HRs, they will also be completed by the AI. So at that
Well,
point of time, maybe it comes after a year or two. At that point of time, if you do not do that, someone else will do that.
so I actually challenged that just a little bit. I challenged that notion just a little bit. And from the standpoint of having, been at the head of organizations that have had accountability for ensuring that everybody's performance review is done, the HR people are not very involved in the actual creation of the reviews. It's very much making sure that everybody has one and that it's in place. Technology has the ability to collect feedback far more effectively than the humans do, to collate that feedback, to mine that feedback through ML algorithms for insights that humans might miss. And then through generative AI, to write documents and text that is highly effective and insightful based on those mined insights. What that's going to free, if the HR people could release the compliance aspect, that, by the way, none of us in HR, none of us like that. None of us go to work saying, thank God we get to do that compliance. We want to do other things. And those are things that are much harder for technology to replace. Technology is not going to build a relationship with a particular hiring manager. Technology is not going to be the one who can make those observations.
I'm saying I do doubt that, because I think that eventually the technology will come to that point as well, where it can build relationships with the people, and it can understand technology can still understand the emotions of a person, right?
Whoa,
So if it,
that part, 100%. But the building of trust is different.
let's
And
say
you know what?
let's say let's say
Here's
90%, right? So even humans do mistakes in understanding the other human being, right?
Oh,
So
that's true.
if right, so if technology is giving you 90% or 95% right results of your emotions, that means now it can react as well.
Yeah.
So you see the relationships of humans and AI, right? And now they can suggest, they can build those all those things which we think will never happen.
Let's go back for a second. And
Okay.
sadly, I'm old I'm old enough to remember the 98, 99,
Hmm.
2000, 2001 time period very,
Yeah.
very clearly.
Hmm.
And in that time period, I remember the frenzy and the sort of frenetic energy around how the internet and online
Yeah.
stores were going to
Yeah.
replace everything brick and mortar. The reality that now, I mean, that's 24 years ago, right? Now, come
Hmm.
forward to today, has that actually happened? And the answer is, in part it has, and in part it hasn't. And if you go back and if you remember that time period, right, it was like it was being spoken of as if it was certain, like it was a fate that had already happened. Every brick and mortar store was going to go away. And I think we're going to see similar things play out here with artificial intelligence and the ways that jobs change. There's a statistic, and I don't remember the source. I can find it, but 84% of the jobs that today's high school graduates, the kids that are going to graduate this year, 84% of the jobs that they will do haven't been invented yet. And so I think what we're going to see in the future is not just this wholesale replacing of roles, but the evolution of those roles and the mix of what we ask technology to do for us and what we want humans to remain in control of. And I think that's going to be a big thing for us to watch in the next 3 to 5 years.
Right, right, right. So let's hope, let's see where the technology leads us in the near future, right?
Yeah.
There is
Faster and
another
better.
aspect. Yeah, because right now the challenge is the speed of innovation is very fast. And all the possibilities of work which people argue with me that this is going to last for some reason, I say, okay, that is how it will be resolved through AI. Like the example I gave you about emotions, right? So that is how it's a debate. It's a debate which
Yeah.
is sometimes it is depressing, sometimes it is hopeful, but it's a good debate. Okay, let's
Well,
talk about
I
the
joke. I joke with people, and when they say when they'll say something, technology is going to do this or humans are not going to be able to do that, I'm like, my joke is, talk to me next week because we'll know something different than we do this week, right?
of course. Okay, let's talk about remote work. Is your company remote?
Well, we are a small company, and so yes, we're 100% remote.
Right. Where is your team located right now?
Oh gosh, Germany,
Okay.
Ukraine,
Okay.
correct that, Croatia. They were
Okay.
in Ukraine, and they're currently in Croatia.
Right.
California, Colorado, a bunch of places.
Right. Right. So when you're going to add Pakistan in that?
So, I'm sorry, the audio cut. I didn't hear you.
I'm saying when you're going to add Pakistan in that.
Oh, it's so funny. We did some Spanish language translation, and
Hmm.
my Spanish language translator is in Pakistan.
Wow. That's amazing.
So you're right. And
Right.
and that's what I think is so amazing now about the way that we're working, especially since the pandemic, is
Right.
that now the focus can truly be on where the
Hmm.
best talent is. Who is the talent that you want to work with, as opposed to
Right.
where are they?
Right. 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 I agree with that because access to talent has been made so easy that you just if you are the person that just needs to get the work done, they can do it very easily these days. Right. Okay. So you are.
And on a bunch
Yeah.
of different schedules. You and I are separated by a lot of hours by virtue of being just in radically different time zones.
Right.
And so it's almost possible for 24 hours worth of work to happen
Yeah.
with a team that is collaborating across global boundaries.
Yes, I agree with that. I agree with that. Totally agree with that. So you are the right person to ask what are the pros and cons of remote work. You have to give an honest answer.
So, I've struggled a lot
Hmm.
with the idea, I think, of having like a fully remote workforce. I came out of my last corporate job before I
Right,
founded
right.
Propulsion AI was in a company that very much wanted to be 100% remote. And I'll be honest, I struggled with that because I think there are certain things that are just fundamentally done better, more effectively when you are physically together. And I'll give you an example of that. But I think to make a sort of early comment before I do that, this is going to be another one of these areas that we see evolution. Like my example on bricks and mortar, like our conversation about the role of technology and where the humans are going to be and where the technology is going to be. I think we're going to see this push pull and sort of an oscillation down to some equilibrium around the idea of where, what do we do remotely and what do we do in person. I think the cons of being remote are all about relationships. It's very hard. It's very easy to have transactional relationships in a remote sense. You get on Zoom, you do the business that you need to do, and you go off. And you don't have the other components of relationships that are non-transactional because you're not present for them. So I think that's the big con. I think it's very, very difficult. So my start in human resources was actually in learning and development. I think it's very difficult. Well, correct that. I think it is much more challenging for a broader group of people to learn when they are not physically together. I think there are a bunch of different opportunities that get created in learning and development when you actually come together. And I think that's a very interesting way to run a company, but it assumes some level of sort of co-location, right? If you have a learning and development day, or you have a time during the quarter that's a learning and development time, I think bringing people together and insisting that they are not remote, insisting that they are in the office I think it's a trend that we're going to see, specific to learning and development, specific to maybe all hands meetings, because you get those relationship elements that you don't otherwise get. But I also think, and I live this, right? I have a 175-pound Great Dane. And sadly, I don't control when he wants to go out, and when he decides that it's time to eat. Like, he's got a mind of his own, and I'm thankful that I get to do that, or family responsibilities, and I can work those around my work. And I don't think my needs in that regard are no different than the needs of of people who are not running companies but are more on the front line of work.
With that, I will ask you my final question. Not a question, but something. I would like you to give some advice to the aspiring entrepreneurs who are basically our audience, right? What they
Mhm.
need to do, what they need to avoid in order to be successful on this path.
I'll give three pieces of advice, and there are three
One, two,
pieces
three,
that
done.
I think I'm still learning this, but they're ones that have been really, really important to me as an
Hmm.
entrepreneur and as a founder. I think the first one is, I thought before, because I had a lot of experience, I thought that I knew a lot about a lot. And it
Okay.
turns out I know next to nothing about almost everything. And getting okay with that, and not worrying about that feeling, and treating everything as, hey, I don't know that, I am leaning into that, I'm going to go figure that out, I can do it. That was an important lesson for me, because I felt very self-conscious about that. I feel like at this stage of my career I should know more, because I'm a subject matter expert. I should know more. And I think just releasing that, leaning into it and grabbing onto it and learning for what you can learn, and then going back and applying it, I think that would be piece of advice number one. Be comfortable with that. Piece of advice number two, like, and this is not new, right? And it's certainly not mine. Everybody says you've got to fail fast. And like, intellectually, I understood that, but I didn't understand the why. And here's the why that I've discovered. Because so much of the process is iterative, because the answer, what you think is the answer today as an entrepreneur, is not your answer tomorrow. And it's not going to be your answer next week. And so I spent a lot of time, especially in the beginning, and I think we're late. We're late releasing this product because I was slow on this lesson, because I was trying to get things right. And what I needed to do was get them good enough, knowing that I'm going to come back and revise that 10 times before anybody sees it, right? So just get it good enough and get going, right? That's the second lesson. And then, I think my third lesson, and this one I think I did really well, but I think it's a really important one: have conversations, talk to everybody, because you just don't know where you're going to have that connection, that serendipitous, you know, happening that leads you to a person that's going to do something really, really important for your business, or, and I think this is equally important, who's going to let you do something really important for theirs. And founder to founder is that's a really important thing. And I don't just limit my comment to founders, right? Talk to everybody, be open to every conversation, because you're going to learn something really important. It's going to change the direction of your business. It did with mine, even down to, and I'll give you a very quick, I know you probably don't want a long answer on this one, but I actually was pitching to two very frontline non-buyer HR people.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I said, tell me one thing that you think is like missing from the platform. And they gave me a really good idea, and it changed what we were doing. And if I had
Right.
said, well, they're not even in a position to buy our product, why would I spend time talking to them? I would have missed it. And it was really impactful, and it's really important to ultimately
Right.
to ourselves. And it came from
Right.
them.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And all 3 points are important, although lengthy, but they're important.
Sorry.
That's fine. They were good. They were good lessons, right? And the person who is going to need it, they are going to listen it.
I hope so.
So they're relevant. Okay. Thank you so much, Scott. And I really appreciate the time you gave us. And I hope the audience with us also enjoyed it.
I am so thankful to have been invited, and it's great to know you and to be in discussion with you and to be your colleague. And I thank you for the invite. It was nice to be here.
Thank you so much. And for the audience, thank you so much for watching. Keep watching so that we can keep bringing more tech stars to your screens. Have a nice day.